And what's good, Joe? It's your man, the Bigga P, and here to share my thoughts on all these fights that we had this weekend. God damn, we had a lot of cards this weekend. Friday, Saturday. Um, it was great. I'm not gonna go into detail about a whole bunch of these. I'm not gonna go into a whole lot of detail on a whole lot of these fights, but definitely worth the mention. I mean, on Friday we had a PBC card and a True TV card. The True TV card, we saw Jesse Hart. Unfortunately, had to labor a little bit against, to get a stoppage against Aaron Pryor Jr., who pretty much just looked like he just showed up to just survive. Um, Fight, unfortunately, went on a little longer than I expected, mostly because of Pryor's almost successful attempts to not be too engaging in the fight until finally he got caught up with a couple of hard shots in the ninth round and then pretty much ended matters. And then the main event was Valdez versus Avalos, and that was just pretty much a one-sided beating within five. The end within the fifth round. Um, really impressive stuff, and I'm talking about incredibly impressive stuff. Valdez will make. Valdez is definitely a guy in the future to look out for. And then we had the PBC card on Friday, which saw Spence opening up against Van Heerden. I didn't know anything. I didn't really know anything about Van Heerden at all. I mean, I was just looking at when I look at his record, okay, maybe this guy may be a little bit durable. And for a while, he was absorbing a lot of punches. Um, I mean, Spence pretty much treated him like a heavy bag. I mean, it was just incredible, like head to the body to head, just throwing these ridiculous combinations. And then, Van Heerden, just in between the posturing and the money. I mean, there were times where he was like, okay, he was doing this little shimmy and whatnot, dropping his hands. But eventually, all those punches that was landing, eventually caught up to him, and then, it was just pretty much it got very almost uncomfortable to watch at the end as Van just pretty much got whooped from pillar to post. I had no problem with that stoppage. Um, Spence did what he had to do. So I would say, hey, I think Al needs to start upping his competition a little bit. And then the main event was Superman making the sixth defense of his title um, against Carpensi, who's pretty much known. Was known in his who's known for upsetting Chad Dawson in his last fight out. I believe it was his last fight out. Yeah. That fight wasn't really competitive at all. Carpensi just did not have the experience to find Superman or to really, although he did land a couple shots here and there, but pretty much it just ended, one-sided fashion with just left hands just completely obliterating Carpensi in 3 rounds. And then Saturday, we had another PBC card. This one I did not see live. I had to, spend a little. I had some other things going on, but I caught these fights, a little bit later. Actually, this morning, it was K9 making his first defense of the belt that he won from Carlos Molina in Mexico against Jamal Charlo, the hard-hitting Charlo, the one that actually, the one that punches. And pretty much that too was also one-sided. Just four knockdowns in 3 rounds. Charlo just pretty much couldn't do no wrong. The first one was just a left hook for the first knock, and then second round was a jab, and then the third one it was just another barrage, another left hook, and then the fourth one, the end of the fight, was a right hand high up on the, I think it was maybe in the temple area. K9 just wasn't in the fight, and I mean honestly that's what I expected. I mean K9, if anyone has ever heard me or even read anything about him, things I've said about, I've never been high on him. Going all the way back to the Contender days when he was on the show, I was never been really high on him at all. And the fact that he was actually was a champion in 2015, and of course beating one of my favorite fighters, mostly because of some unfortunate circumstances, never sat well with me. So. Um, I truly, that's what I expected. I truly expected him to actually lose in that fashion, and lose that he did. So, hey, no, that's what happens. The main event was Zarafa. I'd never heard of him before. Apparently, he was like a dancer or stripper or whatever, versus Peter Quillen. Quillen actually surprisingly made the limit, which I was surprised. I was thinking maybe, okay, we're gonna get another situation where Quillen just does, he shows lackadaisical, he slacks on training, and bam, he has trouble making weight. This fight itself too was not the most exciting one, mostly because Quillen has this thing about fighting scared. Um, for whatever reason, I don't understand it. He fights too scared at times and just too laid back. And it seemed like I thought it was just gonna go to decision, and then in the fifth round he finally turned it up, and then and then brutally knocks out Zarafa with one brutal right hand on the ropes. Um, you hate to see fighters get taken out on a stretcher. But turns out that all the news that you heard, all the news that I read afterwards, that he's actually fine or whatever, and that's a good thing, because you just don't we don't want to you don't I mean fighters that get taken out on stretchers, usually it's not always in the best, it's usually not the best thing to see. I mean, Lord knows, as long as I've watched boxing, I've seen fights where that's happened, and some of the aftermath of it is it's never pleasant, sometimes downright tragic. Yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, now I guess for Quinn, it sets up his fight with Jacobs, which is like, I mean, where either it's gonna be a title fight, or well, Jacobs is really a paper champion at that. With his title, I mean, everyone knows Triple G is the actual champion, the real WBA middleweight champion. So I guess we'll see. That'll probably be a fight made probably either later this year or next year. And then let's see. And then I saw another fight. I saw Marcus Brown, pretty much to me now pretty much ended Gabriel Campillo's career with a first round knockout. Campillo, I mean, that guy's a hard luck fighter. I mean, the guy's faced a lot of stiff competition. Um, I mean, granted he's been a champion himself, but I just don't want to see him actually just be delegated to being a journeyman. So hopefully, hopefully he's, he actually really truly calls it a career. And then afterwards, pretty much the big card of the weekend, Floyd Mayweather versus Andre Berto. Okay, well, I'll probably go into a little bit more detail about this card. When Floyd put out the message that he's looking for an easy fight, and he picked either Andre Berto or Kareem Mayfield, I thought it was some bullshit. Because cause I'm thinking to myself, oh no, this is either him trolling, and then all of a sudden, like, bam, he's gonna actually pick somebody. He's gonna pick somebody else. So imagine my surprise when Andre Berto was being bandied around as a name seriously, and actually was picked as an opponent. Needless to say, I was not happy about it, because I'm not a fan of Berto at all. Never been, and probably never will. But even then, I would recognize and say, okay, if Berto actually earned an opportunity like this. But since getting KO'd by Soto Karass 2 years ago, I mean, he had a little struggle fest with Steve Upshur, and then he had a come from behind KO against Josecito Lopez, who's probably absorbed, who's probably absorbed just as much, who's damage as he has, pretty much. So yeah, when you have those two fights, and yet all of a sudden now you get bumped to a welterweight title shot against Floyd Mayweather, that shit isn't cool. It's not cool at all. But even then, I also heard news that, okay, this was gonna be on CBS. If this was gonna be on CBS for free, I mean, fine, hell, it would make one hell of a PBC. And then what happens is, they did the switch to Okie Doke. CBS, I guess, couldn't guarantee some Floyd's money, so we got a pay-per-view. We got put on a pay-per-view for $75. Well, I think on my cable system, because I have files, I think it was like 79. So you're like, the fuck, why would you have this card on a pay-per-view? And to his credit, I don't know who it was who actually put together the undercard, but the undercard on paper even before that event was pretty damn good. Badu Jack versus George Groves, Jack making the defense of his first defense of the super middleweight title, and then he has Salito Martinez too. You know, because the first fight was the fight of the year candidate, and also one of my favorite fights of the year. It was, you know, and that first fight was a shame that it was not shown on U.S. television when it was live. It was on Puerto Rican pay-per-view. I had to watch that on a stream, and then they rounded it out with at the opener we have Johnny Gonzalez versus Jonathan Okendo, with Ishe Smith and Martirosyan in the Freeview. Well, at least that fight was on the pay-per-view. So that's all good. So yeah, so it was one of those fights on card paper. Like it would have been an absolutely fire PBC card. Make no mistake about it. I mean, PBC like this. If it was on CBS, it would have shared all types of TV ratings, especially with what they're selling it as Floyd's final fight. He's gonna break Rocky Marciano's record, 49-0. That's what he was going to do. This would have made an absolute. People would tune in if it was on CBS. If it was on CBS, because it would have pretty much shown that PBC is actually trying to really make some made a significant stride. Instead, they threw it on pay-per-view, which I was not happy about it. And on top of that, it's gonna be. It's gonna. I'm pretty sure now it's probably gonna be an extremely low buy rate, but forget about that. Go to the card. First, I'll go with Ishe and Martirosyan, Vanes. I always forget how to actually pronounce his actual name. That fight was surprisingly decent because usually an Ishe Smith fight is not the most exciting thing to watch. Same thing with Vanes too. It's the same thing. But this one, they actually surprisingly put on a good scrap, and Ishe would go down for the first and the second time in his career. The first one was a flash. I think it was in the third round. It was a flash, but the second one, that one I actually thought Ishe was not going to get up. That was a right hand. It was a left hook, and then it was a right hand, short, compact right hand right on the chin. Ishe just went down. I thought that was a wrap after that fight. But he got up, he battled back, but Ishe, for whatever reason, I think now Ishe is really starting to show his age. Really, he was a little slower. He was significantly slower. Although surprisingly, in the rounds that he got knocked out in, I actually thought he actually won those rounds. Although I can't give him that because those are 10-8 rounds, and I think that's the reason why you got that one odd judge score with 95-95, and I think that's part of the reason why. And even though that might have actually been an incorrect score, but at least the other fights, but at least the other scores, they were rightfully so. Vanes just pretty much he controlled the action and everything. He actually gave Ishe a pretty good beating. I think it was like 97-91. So hats off to him. That was actually a pretty entertaining free fight where I was not expecting anything good at all. So then we get to the actual pay-per-view card. We got Johnny Gonzalez. I think it was his first or second fight. No, second fight at 130 versus Jonathan Okendo. Johnny, if you've ever heard me talk about him before, he's one of the few fighters I will not gamble any money on. Mostly because in the history of watching some of his fights, there are fights where I thought he would have lost, and he's actually won. He won in convincing fashion, and then he had these fights where I thought he would win, and he would just fall apart. And he's had way too many of these hot and cold moments for me. It almost irritates me because he's not a bad fighter. He's not. He's not a bad fighter, but he just has these hot and cold moments where you just don't know what you're going to get. And this was the fight where I said, okay, Okendo will. This is a fight where I think he would actually beat Okendo. And this fight was actually a pretty bloody opener. There were cuts everywhere. They traded knockdowns. I think it was in the second round. It was an excellent fight. But Johnny just got outworked as usual. And Okendo pretty much ends because Johnny has this tendency to start fading late in fights. and Kendall just kept his foot on the gas, and outside of the cuts, all the multiple cuts everywhere, and he scored the upset. It was I think it was a majority. It was a majority decision. So kudos to Kendall for that. And Johnny, if now I would say retire, but then knowing him, but then knowing they'll throw him with some top 130 founder, and and then he'll score an upset, and then bam, he's back in the game. But I think Johnny's time is starting to come. I mean, the Gary Russell fight, I mean, that was an easy one, man. I didn't think Johnny had the speed to even handle had the speed to actually handle Gary Russell. Um, so I mean, honestly, Johnny's probably looking at retirement. The guy is pretty sharp one. He's had a lot of he's like 60 something fights. I would try to call it a career at this particular time. Um, the second fight was Badu Jack versus George Groves. Jack, of course, making the first defense of the super middleweight title that he won from Anthony Durrell on the previous PBC. Badu Jack has come roaring back. I mean, that fight that he had, when he got knocked out and won by Derek Edwards. I mean, that's almost seems like it's an anomaly now because he's actually been sharp and on point. And this fight was no different. Badu Jack scored a first round knockdown, and I'm thinking to myself, like, this is going to be a short night. Knocking Groves down in the first round with a clean shot behind the ear. And then, but George, he battled back. He showed what he's made of. I mean, I mean, some of the jab that he was landing was just heavy. Like, I mean, I could hear it through through my speakers. It was just heavy jab. But Badu showed patience though. I mean, Badu like pretty much picked them apart, and then unfortunately, Groves what he does is he also loses stamina, and I think this is where Jack pulled away from the fight, and then that's why I think I had to score like 115, 112, and like I mean Jack clearly won it. I mean I just wish Groves' sportsmanship was a little bit more. I mean, I wish that he didn't just leave the ring because it was a good fight, and I know he felt like he won the fight. But just like what happened in the Froch fights, you can't, you got to work on your stamina, man. Like I know it's your third attempt, but you can't just start. You can't keep fading in these fights that you're in. But he still has. I mean, he does have the win over DeGale, right? So that was an excellent fight. I mean, I loved the infighting in the fight. It was a lot of skill shown. Um, I enjoyed it a lot. The third fight, the co-main event, would be Orlando Salido trying to regain the belt that he lost to Rocky Martinez back in April in Puerto Rico. The fight that I said that could have been a great televised fight for the U.S. Instead, it was on a Puerto Rican pay-per-view, which you had to pay. I think it was like $49.99 for, which I thought was a terrible thing. I mean, Showtime could have picked it up and aired it, but nevertheless, like I mean, this fight, they traded knockdowns. I believe it was in the second round. Rocky's a lot more legit than Salido. Salido had what we call, I think, had a Salido had what I call I mean, he stepped on the guy's foot, and then he had like that's why he got his knockdown. And then Rocky's knockdown was a lot more heavy. It was right hand that just sent Salido flying to the side of the ring, and down, and he was hurt. But then after that, once you hurt Salido, that guy comes back fighting, and pretty much I didn't really bother to score all that much. I mean, I just sat there and just watched these two just absolutely rain blows on each other. I mean, Salido to me got the better of it. I mean, Salido threw like well over 1,000 punches per round. For a guy who's 34 years old, has been in all these wars he's had. It was great, and it was the pressure. And Rocky, I think in the first fight, Rocky moved around a little bit more early than what he did in the first fight. But Salido's body work took him away. Like pretty much by the middle of the fight, like Rocky had a hard time, and I do mean an absolutely hard time trying to move. And Salido's pressure just increased. But Rocky did his thing by actually standing his ground and actually trying to trade with him as much as he can. And I think that's where You know, a lot of the judges actually got the I think, while I was, where judges actually tried to score some of those rounds for Rocky. Um, I still think that Slater pulled it off. I mean, if like I said, fortunately I didn't have not have a chance to rewatch the fight. I'm gonna have to wait until I can actually find me a good copy. But in my heart, I mean, Slater outlanded him, threw more punches. I mean, everything. Like, there's everything just all visually that Slater won this fight, and then the stats. And yet they gave it as a draw. And what was surprising to me, I guess what was revealed is the 12th round, which I thought Slater won hands down. They all gave it to Rocky. I mean, of course, if that was not the case, Slater should have won that fight on the cards. I mean, it should have not been a draw, but I mean, a judge gave Rocky the victory on one card, which I can understand. I just didn't see it. So it was a hard luck. I mean, I felt for Salido, man. Salido put in, an absolute, a performance at his age with this type of wear and tear. Like, that belt was his. So I mean, for sure, there's going to be a third fight. Probably not till next year, though, obviously. But there's definitely going to be a third fight, and I can't wait to see it. Now those fights, those undercard fights, I was riding high. I mean, those fights, I was on a good boxing high, and I'm thinking to myself, and then now, you got Floyd and Berto that has to follow after that. Did they fall after that? No, they didn't. Like I said, I mean, Berto has a lot of things about him that I never liked as a fighter. I never liked that. I never liked as a fighter. And one of the things of that kid was one of those things is his ring IQ's not high. It's probably one of the lowest of all the like known mainstream fighters. It's probably one of the lowest I've seen. Yeah, he's athletic, sure, but you need more than athleticism to actually try to bother Floyd Mayweather. You're not gonna just bother. You got to be able to think a little bit, just a little bit, and I didn't see anything like that. I mean, pretty much Floyd. I mean, I already knew this fight would have been on some bullshit. When you see Floyd like in the after the second round, shimmying and doing all this other stuff, dancing. And I was like, okay, so it's pretty much the thing he's not in the fight. It's a piece of cake, which is already added to my discontent for this particular fight in the first place. And I don't know what advice Virgil was giving him in his corner. I didn't understand it, but I didn't think I don't think he gave him anything. I mean, he tried to box the man. But I mean, pretty much that was a lot of that was pretty much a lot of fail. I mean, Berto didn't seem to have anything really. I mean, you couldn't keep him in the middle of the ring because he'd get his ears boxed off. On the ropes, he was getting his ears boxed off. You know, I mean, occasionally he'd land a couple shots here and there, but it was just clear that he just did not have, just like everyone said, like everyone was shitting on this fight. And then this is the reason why they were shitting on this fight. I mean, they wanted Burrow to have that, that career performance, but it just wasn't because he didn't. I mean, fuck having a plan B. The man didn't have a plan A, you know. And in the 12th round, Floyd actually managed to hurt him too. Floyd offensively, this was. I mean, he opened up more than he did against Pacquiao. I mean, that's for sure. But I just wish he'd actually. I mean, if you're gonna fight, if you're gonna be doing what you're doing, posturing and all that stuff, at least make a very concerted effort to really try to put Berto away. I mean, we've seen it before. I mean, Silva Carras did it, beat him down for 12 rounds before stopping him. And that's what I wanted to see. But unfortunately, that was not the case. Pretty much like I said, I mean, Floyd easily outboxed him. I mean, there's nothing technical you really want to say about this fight. Berto just didn't have it, as everyone pretty much thought he did. So I mean, Floyd won the clear decision, and then cruised to 100, cruised to 49-0, and then Berto lasted the distance and got us $4 million. That's pretty much the fight. So yeah, I mean, do I think Floyd's retirement is going to stick? No, I don't. If it does, then it would be a bigger surprise to me than him picking Berto as an opponent. Floyd will be back. He will be back. Like I said, he can try to at least, obviously he'd have to give up those belts that he has. if to me to think. But I honestly do think Floyd will be back in the Floyd will be back at some point in 2016 for a 50-0 type of deal, depending because I mean this fight was the last and the final fight in the contract with Showtime, the 6-fight contract. So we'll see. I mean Berto, honestly, I mean, personally, I mean, I think, like I said, Floyd probably was not in the business to really put him away, but I just don't see how Berto does not get put away if he faces another top five welterweight. Um, so yeah. Overall, like I said, I mean, like I said, this would have made an excellent PBC card, but a pay-per-view card, like I said, it was just the undercard for once for Floyd pay-per-view. I mean, this is his best undercard in years, where the fights were absolutely fire, but the main event fell completely flat. So yeah, those are my thoughts. So until next time, all right, peace.